Hello my beautiful patrons. Today we're going to be working on the basket weave stitch. So it is a 8 stitch, 8 row pattern repeat. So what it is the stitch consists of 8 stitches and 8 rows long. So you can do however many stitches or however big your project needs to be. It needs to be a multiple of 8 though, because you have those 8 stitches that make the pattern. So this section right here is my 8 row pattern repeat. So I have 4 front post double crochets and 4 back post double crochets, which create the stitch pattern. Of course, you can use however many stitches that you need for the project that you're doing, but you do have to have it of multiples of 8. And then your pattern needs to be 8 rows long. So let's say I have my 4 rows here, and then I have to have another 4 rows of the opposite stitch to be able to create that kind of checkered effect. So it creates the blocks, and then you just repeat that throughout the whole pattern. I hope that makes sense. They are worked with front post, double crochets, and back post. And if you don't know what that means, when you're making a double crochet, I'll just go ahead and make a double crochet here. So let's say I went in here and did a double crochet, just like that. So the post is, here I'll do a couple, that way I can point it out a little bit better. So the post of a stitch is going around the body of the stitch. So front post, you go in like this. It's facing you. So you're going in through the front of the work around the stitch. And back post, you're going through the back around the stitch, like that. So I just wanted to clarify that, because you do have, a lot of front post and a lot of back post stitches here, and if you didn't quite understand how to do a front post or a back post, you would be really lost. So when any type of stitch is referring to a post, it's always going around the body of the stitch. So this is the post of the stitch. So to do a front post, like I said, I'll go ahead and do one with you real quick. You're just going to start your double crochet like you normally would. You're going to go in, I'm going to do a couple double crochets real quick, and then I'll go back and go through each one of those stitches with you. That way it's just easier to understand. So let's pretend like this isn't here. So your first row of this pattern is just a plain double crochet row. So let's say I wanted to do a front post double crochet. I would just start out like I normally would with my double crochet, and I'm going to go around the post like this. So I'm going through the front of the work. I'm going to yarn over and pull my yarn through, and then I would just finish my double crochet like I normally would. So that's a front post. You can tell a front post because it kind of creates long columns. So you'll see like these long columns, they kind of look like a continuous stitch. So once again, that's going through the front of the work, around the body of the stitch. You're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you're just going to finish out your double crochet as normal. So that's a front post. Now a back post, you're going to yarn over just like you normally would. You're going to go through the back of the work, up between the 2 stitches, the one that you're currently just worked, and then the one that you're going to work. You're going to go around the stitch that you're working and just pull up a loop through the back like that. and then finish out your double crochet as normal. So once again, I just worked this stitch, so I'm going to work this stitch. I want to go in the back around the body of the stitch that I'm working and pull up a loop and then finish out my double crochet. So I hope that that was helpful for anyone who hasn't done post stitches before. I know they can be a little intimidating, but they're really simple once you get the hang of them. You just remember that a front post means go through the front of the work, a back post means go through the back of the work, and a post stitch is the body of the stitch itself. So, you know, the long part of the stitch. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, as normal, message me and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. But once again, this is the basket weave stitch. So I'll go ahead and get to the tutorial now. Today I'm going to be working on the basket weave stitch. So I just have some scrap yarn here and my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. But you can use this particular stitch for pretty much anything. You can use it for hats, headbands, blankets, scarves, pretty much anything that you work in a panel or in the round. As long as your stitch counts right, you can use this stitch. And it's one of my favorite stitches, so I think it's really a nice stitch to have in your stitch arsenal. So I'm going to go ahead and go over it today. Like I said, I just have some scrap worsted weight yarn here. Of course, depending on what you're doing would depend on what type of yarn you're going to use and what hook. You always want to read your yarn label to make sure that, you know, you're checking the hook size and, you know, care of the yarn. So keep all that in mind when you're choosing your yarn. So I'm going to start off with a slip knot, and the basket weave stitch is a multiple of 8. So you have to have the stitch pattern goes across 8 stitches. So you have to have multiples of 8 in order to have the pattern be complete. So just keep that in mind. For our little sample, we're going to chain 16. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now, I don't do any chain 2s or chain 3s. So if you look up this pattern, you're going to see, if you look up like a chart for this pattern, you're going to see that they have you add an extra, I think it's 2 to the beginning chain. I don't do that because I go directly into the stitch that I'm working. So I am going to add an extra 1 just like I would normally, and I'm going to go into that 16th stitch with a double crochet, and I'm going to put 1 double crochet in every one of these chains for this beginning row. Whoops, I've been doing a lot of single crochets lately, so and remember when you're doing your chain row not to get your stitches too tight, because you have to work back in them. If they're too tight, you'll have trouble with that. So this stitch is really good for patterns that you want to see a lot of texture in. So it's really good for blankets. I think it would make a gorgeous baby blanket because it has a lot of texture to it. So it's not just, you know, plain double crochets. Even though you are doing double crochets, they're not, you know, just plain back and forth. You have a little different stitches or different way of doing the stitch to be able to create that texture. Okay, and there's my last stitch. So we're going to chain one and turn. Now over the next 4 stitches, go in with a front post double crochet. So you're going to yarn over and you're going to go around the double crochet post, pull up a loop, and then you're just going to finish out your double crochet as normal. So that's 1, and you're going to do 4 of these. This is 2, 3, and 4. And these are front post double crochets. So basically what it is it kind of looks like continuous, like the stitches are just continuing. They don't ever look like they stop. So that's your first 4 stitches. So that's half of the stitch pattern. So the next 4 stitches are going to be back post double crochet, which creates those ridges. So you're going to yarn over and you're going to go behind and go around the post. And pull up a loop and then just finish out your double crochet as normal. So you see how it creates that ridge. So we're going to do a total of 4 of those. So this is the second one. And third. And here's the 4th. And that is your stitch pattern. So it's over 8 stitches. You have 4 front post double crochets and 4 back post double crochets. And that's what kind of gives you that blocking effect. You need to do 4 more front post double crochets. Now make sure that you don't work around the one that you just worked, because sometimes it can be confusing because you're working through the back of that loop. So just kind of give that stitch a tug and that'll tell you which stitch you're on. So we're going to go through or do 4 front post double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now our last 4 stitches will be back post double crochets. So you're working around the back of the post. So this is what your first pattern section looks like. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. So this pattern repeat is for a total of 4 rows. So you'll have a total of 4 of these ridges here. So you just want to keep in the pattern that you're already working. So these are front post double crochets, so we're going to put 1 front post double crochet in each one of those 4. And then the next set of 4 is back post double crochets. Oops. So we're going to do that over those 4 stitches. Once you get to working on this, you'll figure out how easily you like to handle it. Everybody does front post or post stitches differently when they're holding it. Sometimes they hold it like this, they spread it apart, sometimes they fold it in half, which is normally what I do. It's just, you know, whatever is more comfortable for you. As long as you know what stitch you're supposed to be doing when you're doing it, you work out perfectly fine. So the next 4 is front post double crochets. And then our last 4 are back post double crochets. So this is what you should have so far. So you can the easiest way to tell, because I know these stitches are kind of, or these rows are kind of hard to keep track of if you don't write it down, is by how many ridges you have here. So once you have 4 ridges, you know you've completed your 4 rows, because this beginning double crochet row doesn't count in that stitch pattern section. So that was just our beginning row. So you're going to chain 1 and turn. And so I have front post double crochets here, so I'm going to put 1 in each one of those 4 stitches. And then the next 4 stitches are back post double crochets. And then the next 4 are front post double crochets. And then the last 4 are back post double crochets. And it's going to want to scrunch up a little bit because you have these different, the stitches are going different ways. So this is what you should have so far. You can tell that you're on your 3rd row of this repeat section because you have 3 ridges here. So we have 1 more row. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. This is front post, so we're going to do 4 front post stitches. And the next 4 are back post. And then the next 4 are front post. And then the last 4 are back post. So this will complete the first section, the first half of this pattern. So the pattern, once again, is an 8-row repeat, or an 8-stitch repeat over 8 rows. I hope that makes sense. So we have our 8 stitch repeats here, and then in order to complete the pattern, you have to have 8 rows. So the first 4 are like this, and then the next 4 we'll be putting the opposite on each one of these. So the blocks will change. It'll turn more checkered than just columns. And that's what we're going to start in this next row. So once again, I can tell that I am on my 4th row because I have 4 ridges here. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. And I have front post here for the first 4 stitches. So I know that in this section, I need to change that for this row to back post. So we're going to put 1 back post crochet, double crochet over these 4 stitches. Okay, so that's the first 4. So the next 4, we see that we have back post here, so we need to put front post on top of it. So we're going to put front post over the next 4 stitches. So every 8 rows, the pattern will change back to the opposite of what it is. So that way you have those little squares that create that check portion of the basket weave. So the next 4 stitches are going to be back post. And once you finish this row, you'll just follow what pattern is for that row that you just completed. And then the last 4 stitches will be front post. Okay. So from for the next 4 rows, you're just going to repeat, or you're just going to follow the stitch pattern that you just created on this row. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. So I can see that I have back post double crochet here, so I need to go ahead and just do back post double crochet. Over these 4 stitches. And then I have front post double crochet for the next 4. And then for the next 4 is back post double crochet. And then the last 4 are front post double crochet. Okay, so we're going to chain 1 and turn. So the first 4 are back post double crochet. And then the next 4 are front post double crochet. And then the next 4 are back post double crochet. And then the last 4 are front post double crochet. So we are on our 3rd row of this pattern repeat, so we know we need 1 more row. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. So the first 4 are back post double crochet. And then the next 4 are front post double crochet. And then the next 4 are back post double crochet. and then the last 4 are front post double crochet. And we've completed our 8 rows of pattern repeat. So depending on what size project you're doing, you're just going to continue on. And since we've completed the 8, you're going to start another 8 row. So you would, this next row would be doing the opposite of what the section is before, because we want to create our little blocks. So you would do front post, no, we would turn it. You would do front post here and back post there, you know, front post, back post, and then, you know, would you just complete your pattern for the next 4 rows. And then for that, you would repeat it again, or, you know, flip it again. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that I didn't go too fast, but this is quite an in-depth stitch pattern. It's not nearly as hard as it seems, but you do kind of have to keep track of what you're doing. But like I said, it's really textured and I really like it. It would make really nice blankets, or I've made cowls out of this. I have headbands that I've made. I have future intentions on making a like storage basket out of the basket weave. So like I said, I hope this was helpful. If I went too fast, I'm sorry. If you have any questions, please, you know, message me and I will be glad to answer them. I'm trying to think of anything else that I should tell you. So yeah, just, you know, keep in mind that I do my patterning a little bit different. I don't like to add extra chains when they're not really necessary. I like to go straight into whatever stitch that I'm working. So if you happen along a pattern chart for this, it's going to look a little bit different than mine, because I don't do the extra chains. I don't, you know, I don't add that extra gappiness that a lot of other people may. I like to go directly into whatever stitch that I'm working in. So I hope this was helpful. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.